known to be active is the Badu gang in Nigeria that has murdered dozens of people. 3 days earlier, 4 worshippers were killed as they prayed, in the latest murders blamed on a shadowy gang dubbed the Badu, believed to have killed 30 people since June last year. Fear and a lack of faith in the police to protect them has prompted residents to watch over their communities. Every night, bonfires are lit on the streets between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Anyone caught on suspicion of being a member of the gang is immediately lynched, locals said. The gang is said to drain the blood of their victims into a calabash or gourd, then soak it onto a white handkerchief. The rumor is that Badu sells the blood-stained handkerchief to ritualists who use it for money and power charms, said Babatunde Oganyemi, a traditional chief in Ibshi, in the south of Ikorodu. Each handkerchief costs 500,000 naira, $1,600, 1,400 euros. This explains why Badu usually wipe out an entire family in order to make more money. 2. The serial killings, almost done with impunity, sooner put the residents on edge, as patience thinned out about police inaction in taming the menace. Some communities set up their own vigilante gangs to protect themselves, since the police had woefully failed in their duties. The self-help culminated into recent lynching of suspected members of the gang. The first happened at Igbo Oluwo Estate in Ikorodu on June 30th. 3 members of the gang arrested by the security team were burnt to death. Last week, 7 suspected members of the gang were set ablaze at Otagunyan and the police followed up, with the arrest of over 100 people, suspected to be linked with the bloodthirsty gang. This isn't new though. There were cults engaged in this type of superstitious murder that were documented by, and rooted out by colonial governments long before. I'll talk about them in the next post. 3. The most well-known of the older societies is the cult of the Leopard Men. From Wikipedia. The Leopard Society, also called Eniato Aniota, was a West African secret society active in the early to mid-20th century that practiced cannibalism. They were centered in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Côte d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. Members would dress in leopard skins, waylaying travelers with sharp claw-like weapons in the form of leopards' claws and teeth. The victims' flesh would be cut from their bodies and distributed to members of the secret society. According to their beliefs, the ritual cannibalism would strengthen both members of the secret society as well as their entire tribe. These were exclusive groups of people who were believed to be liable to possession by the spirits of carnivorous animals such as leopards and crocodiles, and who carried out ritual killings while in a state of possession. During the course of the 20th century, the Liberian government outlawed these societies, but some of them nevertheless continued to function clandestinely. 2. Here's another source. I recommend reading the whole thing. Beginning in the 1870s, a curious spate of gruesome killings began to unfold out in the wilds and rural areas of the French colony of Libreville, Gabon, in the Badlands of colonial Africa. Bodies began showing up that for all appearances had been ravaged by some fearsome beast. With vicious gashes across the body, missing limbs, and the corpses sometimes even decapitated. The frightened local populace became increasingly panicked as more brutalized corpses began turning up. And although authorities at first blamed the deaths on such things as animal attacks or disgruntled slaves, it would soon become apparent after consorting with the locals that in fact something far stranger was going on. 4. The interesting story of how the British tried to fight this cult. Terry Wilson had been district officer of a province in eastern Nigeria for only 6 months when, early in 1947, he discovered that the leopard men had begun operating in his jurisdiction, claiming mainly young women as their victims. When Wilson raided the house of a local chief named Nagago, his men found a leopard mask, a leopard skin robe, and a steel claw. Acting on a tip from an informer, Wilson ordered his police officers to dig near the chief's house, where they found the remains of 13 victims. The chief was put in prison to await trial, and Wilson set out on a determined mission to put an end to the leopard men's reign of terror. But the local inhabitants were too terrified of the leopard cult to come forward. There were several more murders during the weeks that followed, including the wife and daughter of Nagago, the imprisoned chieftain. A desperate Wilson hoped that the sight of the mutilated bodies of his family would anger Nagago into betraying the cult members who had so obviously turned on him. But the shock proved too much for the chief. When he saw the bloodied corpses of his wife and daughter and realized how viciously his fellow leopard men had betrayed him, he collapsed and died of heart failure. 5. In Liberia and Sierra Leone there is a cannibalistic group known as the Niji or Crocodile Society. Societies like the Niji are known to prey on humans to feed their fetish, usually a carved wooden or waxen image of the spirit of their society. This fetish god is attended to by its Zoe, priest. And so it is the Niji Zoe who knows the rituals for both placating the spirit of the leopard and for gaining power from this spirit. One of the powers they are said to obtain from this spirit is the ability to transform, werewolf-like, into a leopard or water leopard, crocodile. The Niji Society is also notorious for ritualistically murdering their victims and making it look like a leopard or crocodile attack. The telltale signs of the ritualistic murder, however, is that certain body parts are missing from the victim. These body parts are esteemed for their purported ability to instill specific powers in the person who eats them under the proper guidance of the Zoe. Part of that ceremony seems to involve the fetish god being fed some of the victim's blood and fat. Once that spirit is satisfied, then the initiates eat specific body parts for specific powers themselves. The distribution of these body parts is usually determined by the rank of the members, with the highest ranking getting the choice parts. 6. These groups are still active and have high-ranking politicians and leaders within their ranks who seek magic to aid their quest for power. Similar to conspiracies of Western elites engaging in murderous occult practices. After independence, however, many nations declared secret societies illegal. In other countries, secret societies continue to flourish and often function as a major and legitimate force in local level politics. Many of these groups cut across ethnic, language, and national boundaries. The Poro is geographically the largest such association in West Africa. Around midnight, just as Wilson was beginning to think about returning to the compound, a nightmarish figure crawling on all fours emerged from the jungle, pounced on the young officer's corpse, and began clawing at his face like a leopard. But rather than claws raking the body, Wilson caught the glint of a two-pronged steel claw in the moonlight. The killer had returned to complete the cult ritual of sacrifice. Wilson advanced on the leopard man, and the robed murderer snarled at him as if he were truly a big cat. When he came at him with the two-pronged claw, Wilson shot him in the chest. The shrine itself was discovered deep in the jungle, cunningly hidden and protected by a large boulder. The cult's altar was a flat stone slab that was covered with dark bloodstains. Human bones were strewn over the ground, A grotesque effigy of a half-leopard, half-man towered above the gory altar. During February of 1948, 73 initiated members of the cult were arrested and sent to prison. Eventually, 39 of them were sentenced to death and hanged in a back prison, their executions witnessed by a number of local tribal chiefs who could testify to their villages that the leopard men were not immortal. What do you think about African cryptids? I think the water lion sounds pretty plausible. The Morosi, or spotted lion, is described as a lion with spots all over its back. It is described as being smaller than a normal full-grown lion, but larger than a leopard, and it lacks a mane. The hair it does have around its neck measures no more than 5 inches. Sightings of the Morosi have been a regular occurrence to the African natives, and the first outsider, European, sighting took place around 1904. The first recorded encounter of a spotted lion took place in 1931 by a farmer named Trent. Managed to shoot and kill 2 Morosi in the mountains at an elevation of 10,000 feet. The 2 lions were both covered in spots that are typically only seen on lion cubs. The 2 specimens brought great interest from the Nairobi Game Department, and after the examination of one of the lions, Trent was allowed to keep one of the full skins as well as a skull. The Agagwi is also known as the Kakundakari or Kilamba. It is a human-like creature spotted in the jungles and forests of Congo, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and Zambia. The first sighting was in 1900 by British Captain William Hickins, but it wasn't actually reported until the December issue of Discovery magazine in 1937. British officer Cuthbert Burgoyne stated he saw a similar creature in 1927. The last sighting was in the late 1950s. It is usually described as being anywhere from 2 to 5 feet tall. It has disproportionately long arms and rust-colored hair all over its body. The skin underneath has an orange or coppery hue. The Agagwi's feet are only about 5 inches long. The animal is quite similar to a modern chimpanzee, but it has a more rounded forehead, sharper and smaller teeth, and different hair and skin color. Cryptozoologists hypothesize that the Agagwi is a species of Australopithecine, which was a very early form of humans living 2.5 million years ago. One of the best known sightings occurred near the turn of the 19th century when Captain William Hickins was sent on an official lion hunt to this region. While there, waiting in a forest clearing for a big cat, he witnessed the bipeds, which he later described in the December 1937 issue of the London magazine Discovery. Some years ago I was sent on an official lion hunt in this area. While waiting in a forest glade for a man-eater, I saw 2 small, brown, furry creatures come from the dense forest on one side of the glade and then disappear into the thicket on the other side. They were like little men, about 4 feet high, walking upright, but clad in russet hair.